Hi, and welcome to this video. And in this video, we're going to be looking at branding and brands, and we're going to look at a number of the concepts and the vocabulary that you need in your course. And the question is if you go out and you go into a supermarket, what do you buy? Do you buy products because you need the product? Or do you buy brands because you know the brands and you trust the brands? Or do you buy both? So this brings us on to our first piece of vocabulary, which is all to do with branding. So what is branding? Well, branding is about taking a product, say like Coca-Cola, which is the brown liquid, and you build up the brand around that product. And you build up a number of unique characteristics and distinct characteristics for the brand that distinguish the brand, and so they separate it from the competition. And you build up a number of positive ideas and images and concepts around the brand, and also to give people a good experience around the brand. Let's look at brand identity. Now, brand identity is all to do with the physical things around the brand. So these are things that you can see, things like the name, the colors that are used, the typeface, the fonts that are used, any symbols, any graphic features, and things like the logo of the brand. And these days, if you want to find out more about brand identity, or you want to find out about the identity of a brand, you can look online and you can find what's called a style guide or a branding guide. And many of the big companies these days, they have these online. And when you look at the branding guide, according to the brand, there'll be all kinds of different information. So there will be information about the colors that you can use, the fonts that can be used, and I'll give you the codes for the fonts that you should be using. They'll tell you how to use the logo and how not to use the logo. And if we look, for example, here at the example of Netflix, well, Netflix, for example, there would be information there, or there is information about how this red color of Netflix is used, about the font that is used. And there's also information about what's called here the word mark, which is the distinct treatment of the name of the company or the product in branding. And if you think about Netflix, it's to do with the shape of the word mark. And if we also think about Netflix, there is also in the brand identity, there is this sound that Netflix uses. So brand identity will bring us on to what is called brand recognition. And brand recognition is all about the extent to which we as consumers recognize certain brands when we see them. And this is often a result of advertising. So, for example, if we go back to the Coca-Cola example, that if I see the Coca-Cola product and the Coca-Cola brand from a distance, then I can recognize that brand. I recognize the shape of the product, I recognize the colors that are used, and I recognize the font, the very distinctive logo that is used by Coca-Cola. So brand recognition often goes hand in hand with brand awareness. And brand recognition is about putting the product in front of people. But brand awareness is really about developing the trust and the loyalty for a brand. And sometimes when brand awareness is very strong, the product actually becomes, or your brand becomes synonymous with the product that is being used. For example, if we take a Band-Aid, for example, this is a sticking plaster, and this is often synonymous with using plasters in general. And it's to do with the reputation and the quality and the features of your brand. So the next phrase that I would use with brand, and I would definitely include these days, is brand consistency. And brand consistency has different aspects. And today we need to look at the changing landscape of advertising. So if we looked at advertising maybe 30, 40 years ago, maybe we talked about TV and print advertising. But these days we can look at advertising, and advertising is put on all kinds of platforms, and we should definitely look at all different kinds of social media applications and digital applications. And consistency is about when you put forward an advertising message, it's about having the same message across all these channels. So basically it means that if you've got a product, you don't want to be putting one message out on TV and then another out on billboards on the street and then another message on social media. You want the same kind of message going out across all the channels. Another aspect that we can look at with consistency is to do with the consistency of the brand identity and all the elements of the brand itself, that everything fits together and belongs together and it fits the message that you're giving for the brand. And this is brand consistency. So then we come on to brand promise. Now, a brand promise is all about what you promise with your brand and what consumers can expect from your brands. So what does your brand do for whom? And what can consumers expect from your brands? This is very much tied in with your reputation, and it's also tied in with your company mission as well. And to give you an example, I've taken this from the website for Mercedes trucks. And if we look at this example, we can see that Mercedes trucks have a very detailed brand promise. And at the end of this, they deal with tying it in with their mission. Brand personality is to do with human characteristics. So brand personality basically is about, if you took a brand and you were to describe that brand as a person, how would you describe that brand? And I've written down some examples here. So for example, we've got serious, conservative, formal. It could be fun, crazy, creative. It could be ethical, trustworthy, honest. It could be upper class, sophisticated, and glamorous. Now this brings us on to brand extension. So brand extension is about when you have a product and you've established your product and you've established your branding and you have this in a particular product category. So for example, let's come back again to Coca-Cola. So I have the Coca-Cola brand and I've established the Coca-Cola brand in the drinks category. Now, the Coca-Cola branding, as I said before, is classic, it's very successful, it's very recognizable, and people have a very high brand awareness. So as a company, what I can decide to do then is use that branding on similar products in the same category. So if I take Coca-Cola, for example, I could use Coca-Cola on products, other drink products, things like other kinds of fizzy drinks, fizzy sodas, fruit juices, or maybe even in water. Now, if I have brand extension, there is also something called brand stretching, and that brings us on to the next expression. Now, brand stretching is very, very similar to brand extension. Now, but the difference is that with stretching, you would stretch your branding, you would take your branding and you would put that into different product categories. So for example, with Coca-Cola, I might take the branding and I put the branding and I sell a range of t-shirts, for example. Stretching can be a slightly risky strategy. There have been many examples in the past where stretching hasn't worked. So for example, there was an example a few years ago where Levi's, who make the classic jeans, they decided to try and sell men's suits. Now this brings us on to maybe what I feel is some of the problem to do with the difference between extension and stretching. Now you could argue that if you manufacture or you brand jeans and then you sell men's classic suits, then you could argue that this is the same product category and this is all to do with clothing. But the problem that Levi's had was that people saw this as different kind of products and they didn't accept the suits and they had to take the suits off the market. And then we come on to another expression that you should know, and this is the final one. This is brand equity. Now, brand equity, in establishing brand equity, it can be very, very complicated, and we don't need to go into that here. But brand equity is to do with the value of the brand. Now, this is distinct from the product. And value of a brand is all to do with branding, and it's all to do with the value and the perception that consumers have of your brand. Now maybe, again, I could give the example here with Coca-Cola. If I took a no-name Coca-Cola and it doesn't have very distinct branding or very well-known branding, then the brand equity from that product or that brand will not be very high. But if I take Coca-Cola, it not only has the product, but it has this very classic branding and this very well-known branding. And there will be, if I were to sell, or the company were to sell the company Coca-Cola, then this branding, this brand Coca-Cola, this brand equity would be quite high, and a value and a sum of money would have to be paid for this. Now, a brand equity is often called it's a valuable intangible asset. And if we look at finance, it can be put onto the books. And intangible means, we said the consumers have a perception. It's not really something that you can touch. It's not like having tables and chairs and computers in your office. So just to test these expressions, let's go through a few pictures and see if you can remember what these different things are. So here we've got a picture of a girl athlete, and we're talking about the brand, and I say that the brand, it gives me a picture of a healthy, fit, athletic person who is at the top of her game. So when we think back to the expressions, what is this? Well, I'm talking about the brand as if it were a person, and this is brand personality. This is about a person going into a supermarket and they see different products on the shelf, and they know one of the brands, and they look at the brand and they think, yeah, I know that brand. And this is, of course, this is about recognizing the brand, and this is about brand recognition. A product, this is you have branding for water. This is a water product, and the product is advertised out on TV, out on social media platforms, on billboards and in print. And it's the same kind of message across these different platforms. Now this, of course, is brand consistency. So this is about value, and we've got a value of $70 million, and this value has increased by 2%. So this is something called, this is what we said was a valuable intangible asset that can be measured. Now here we've got an aeroplane, and we've got, the aeroplane, the brand, we guarantee to fly you safely and comfortably and give you the ultimate flying experience. Now this is, of course, this is the brand promise. This is what we're trying to tell consumers what to expect from the brand. And then we go back to our supermarket, and we've got the same person in the supermarket, and they look at the brand and they think, yeah, that's a good brand, and I buy it all the time. So this is moving on, as I said, recognition and awareness are hand in hand. This is moving on from brand recognition to brand awareness, where I've got loyalty and I've got trust with the brand, and I'm pushing consumers to buy that brand. Now here we've got an example of a company, and they manufacture chocolates, and they brand their chocolates, and then they move into producing t-shirts with the same branding. And this, of course, is an example of brand stretching. And then I come to the example with Nivea. Now, Nivea is an example. We've got this face cream with the blue tin with the classic Nivea branding, this very distinct blue and the very simple Nivea logo across. And over the years, they've used this branding on all different kinds of products. So we've got here different kinds of creams and shampoos, sun creams, deodorants, and so on and so on. Now this is an example of brand extension. So that's all I wanted to say in this video. This is about brands and branding and getting to grips with some basic vocabulary and some basic concepts to do with branding, so that you can introduce this into answers that you give in your business English classes or assessments. Connected with branding, I would encourage you to look at my videos to do with marketing and also to do with advertising. But that's all I wanted to say in this video, and I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.